All right, welcome, friends. This is the Deconstructionist podcast. We are your hosts. I'm Adam Narlock.
And I'm John Williamson.
And this is episode 1. You made it this far, everybody. And episode 1 is going to be all about, by the way, we've got a studio audience of 1 here. Our producer and worship pastor at the church we go to, David Carey, running the board for us here. So shout out to D. Carey.
Big thanks.
Yeah, he's the man. And episode 1 is all about what the heck do we mean when we're talking about deconstruction, this seemingly weird kind of violent idea. And what, this podcast that we call the Deconstructionist podcast is this place that we're hoping becomes this safe place that John and I are inviting people into that is almost post-denominational, almost interfaith, almost a conversation where people who are struggling with all kinds of different doubts and questions and theories and perspectives can not only listen in and hear lots of different ideas and lots of different perspectives, and hopefully that'll force them to pull things apart, but also it becomes a place to just engage and write in questions. And so we need you guys to do that. So episode 1, what the heck is the deconstruction, the deconstructionists? What are we talking about here?
And I feel like a lot of people are immediately scared by that word. Because I think we talked about it the other day. I think it gets tossed around a lot. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's very easy for people to kind of take a bad connotation.
Yeah, there's some bad
deconstruction.
There's some really bad deconstruction. There's some unsafe, unhealthy, overly dark. What else would you call it?
I think you put it really well in our teaser episode where we're not trying to throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Heck no.
And I think that's what most people think is like you're just stripping away everything and there's nothing left.
Right.
And
definitely not that.
That is not what we're doing here.
That would be hopeless.
That would be hopeless and pointless.
Yeah, we're not interested in that. This is a place where what is real will come out, and we firmly believe that what is real shows itself. And that there's so much that we've constrained ourselves by our own upbringing. So, if I can just kind of start off a little bit here, to those of you that are listening in and you're kind of like, man, what's going on? Like, what's this all about? How does this apply to me? Okay, listen, whoever you are, whether it's me or John or our studio audience of 1 here, David, or whatever, wherever you are, wherever you find yourself, you were handed this system of beliefs. You were handed this set of beliefs, a way of looking at the world, even if somebody didn't iron it out for you or delineate it for you. Maybe you didn't go to Sunday school. Maybe you didn't go to, any kind of a place that gave you any kind of a religious teaching, but you were handed some kind of a way of looking at life. You were handed a way of looking at meaning and beauty and your soul and those kinds of things. And how do you then take ownership of that? You have to start to, we believe, wrestle with it in order to own it. So the whole idea is to test those things and be tested by them. And a lot of times what we think that means in this space becomes just, you got to pull it apart. You got to look at it, and that becomes the safe zone. And that becomes the dialogue between friends, between different perspectives, to help us through hearing what other people have to say, through getting new perspectives, somebody that you've never heard their point of view before, to actually humbly sit and listen and let grace and love do its magic. Right?
Yes. I think it's important to note that will be the continuous theme throughout this podcast, no matter what topic that we're covering in an episode, is that we're just a couple curious kids who just like taking toys apart to see how they work.
Right.
And so we're going to do that with each episode. And
like we had to do with our laptop before we...
Oh my gosh. So...
Before we got going here today. Right, David?
This is funny because this is actually episode 1, the second round. So so we're getting things working. We're not professionals, but we're figuring it out.
It's so much fun. And we're so overjoyed that anyone would sit and listen and invite themselves into this place. Thank you.
And thank you for all of our talented friends who know how to do this stuff better than us.
We don't have to know how to do crap around here.
Nope.
Just talk, man.
So let's talk a little bit about where this word originally came from, kind of what the original meaning was, and then how we're going to steal it and take it for our own.
Yeah, we're going to do something new with this word. We're going to reclaim it.
Yes.
and turn it into something productive.
We're gonna repurpose this. We're gonna DIY this.
The DIY generation, which we're going to talk about here in a little bit.
So basically, first we're going to start off. We're going to give you a dictionary definition of what this word means. And basically, if you pop open a dictionary, you're going to see something similar to a theory used in the study of literature or philosophy, which says that a piece of writing does not have just one meaning and that the meaning depends on the reader. Or another definition is the analytic examination of something as a theory, often in order to reveal its inadequacy. Mm-hmm. So,
and then just the normal sort of, if you just visualize what deconstruction is, it's just like taking something apart.
Exactly. At its simplest form,
pulling it apart. Yeah.
I love it.
And, how is this put together? And what is this piece? And, I'm not sure about this. And where does this go? And I used to have a place for this, and now I don't. And, it's like, what do I do about that? So, that's deconstruction. Then, talk a little bit about Derrida, the philosopher in the 1960s.
1967.
Postmodern, sort of existentialist French philosopher, Derrida.
I'm super glad you said that first.
Yeah.
Because I've been mispronouncing his name for the better part of 2 weeks now.
I'm probably saying it wrong.
Look, man, I see it in print, and I just go with it. So
he's a beast, though.
So sorry, buddy. He's long since gone, but I apologize.
And we're totally going to steal his idea and not really do what he wanted us to do with it.
Well, he can't really argue with it.
That's what philosophy's all about.
Right. So the term deconstruction was coined by this guy in 67 when he wrote about the skepticism of truths held to be true regarding all systems in Western culture. And what he was looking at were the areas of religion, government, and education. So what he meant by this is deconstruction is basically not a philosophy, but a project or a way of working within a given system in order to find its weaknesses. So essentially, deconstruction calls for close analysis by seeking not only to understand a given system, but also to question that system.
Right, and that's where we're locking in with what he was saying, questioning the system from the inside out. Mm-hmm. So we think that that's inherent in all worldviews. We think that's inherent in church history. We're going to talk about that. That's inherent even in Scripture itself. There's this minor chord. There's this descent. There's this inter-questioning. That's what the prophets were. That's what, God himself often does by, revealing different parts of his character. And we'll get to the fact that, Jesus Christ himself was the ultimate deconstructionist against the religious institutions, against people who felt like they were on the outside, people who felt like they were on the inside, the power structures of Rome itself. All of that plays into the invitation that we think has always been right in front of us.
So I think the other important thing to note about Derrida is that even Derrida, who coined this term, did not mean for this to be a way of completely just torching the system.
No.
He did not.
What
that
would be
was
the
not
point
his
in
intention.
that anyway? I mean, so many people want to go there because it's dark and it's just set fire to it. Cry havoc and let loose the dogs of war. But no,
absolutely,
no, that doesn't. That's not redemptive. It's not productive.
So
it's a really crappy place to invite people into.
But I think the cool thing is that this idea, this philosophy, or not philosophy rather, but this project, as he called it, of deconstruction, is just a really good way of thinking critically and just taking a deeper dive into what it is that you hold to be true.
Taking ownership of it.
So the big thing that we keep tossing back and forth is using it in a way that takes a deeper look at your faith or lack of faith, because during your life, you will experience a storm or a great deal of storms, maybe even a hurricane.
Yeah, man.
And when that hurricane hits, is that structure firm enough? Have you gone into that structure to make sure that it is strong enough to withstand the storm?
And what happens if it doesn't?
Or will there be nothing left when that storm hits?
And how many people, I know David's sitting here and you've seen it being raised in the church, John. As a pastor, I've seen this more times than I even care to recount. And this is me kind of finally trying to do something about it more than just preaching sermons, but inviting people into the project themselves and saying, you guys, you need to get ready for this now. You need to realize what's going to happen in your life. If I think grace and God and the divine is merciful to you to allow you to experience this, because I think this is a gift. But how many people have I seen get washed over by a wave and they've got nowhere to go. They've got no beliefs left. It didn't match up. It didn't withhold the test of whatever. They lost the girl. They lost the job. They lost the dream. They lost the ability. and all of a sudden, poof, it's just like, where the frick am I?
Yeah.
And I'm tired of seeing that happen without doing something to invite people into something to test it first, be tested by it, and come to a place of real, honest authenticity that, like, hey, you may not have a lot of what you call belief left at the end of this, but what you have is going to be strong. And it's going to be able to withhold whatever it is that comes at you, like what Richard Rohr would call like the necessary suffering.
Oh, you got there first.
Dude, man, I beat you to the punch this time.
Oh, that hurts a little, man.
Dude, this is the second go at episode 2. You dropped him first on episode 0.
But no one will ever know.
We'll do an outtake.
Good enough.
Yeah. So the necessary suffering that's going to happen, that becomes this beautiful disaster that absolutely wrecks you and forces you into a place that goes, what the crap do I believe? And why didn't what I believe handle this? So many good things. Oh man, I digress.
That's okay. Actually, that puts us in a perfect position here to go into. We read this really great article by this author named Caroline Suresh. I'm sure I pronounced that incorrectly too. I'm sorry, Carolyn. But you can find it at the AugustineCollective.org, and it's just a really great article called Deconstruction and the Nature of God's Grace. Mm-hmm. So why don't you kind of summarize that for the people listening?
So basically, one of the beautiful things that this article really summarized, which we've touched on just a little bit, is inherent in the grace of God, is something that postmodern thought, it takes us to a place that we have to realize that we don't have complete objective omniscience when we're looking at these truths. And there's something, as we're gazing at them, as we're talking about them, as we're wrestling with them, that's holding us up, that's propping us up, that's even allowing the space for us to wrestle and doubt and question and allow us to experience it without claiming too much certitude or certainty. And there's a lot of mystery that you have to just let be mystery. And the postmodern sort of critique of this omniscience that kind of came out of the Enlightenment, out of modernity, that's like, we need to be really sure and we need to have it all delineated and we need to have it locked down. And this is what we teach people. This is the only place to go. There's no other place to go. And this cool critique that comes in says, you can't be omniscient. You're talking about God. You're talking about the depths of reality, the depths of your soul, worship, wonder, transcendence, majesty. You're talking about things bigger than you can possibly imagine. Stop acting like you own it and allow it to be as big as it actually is. And I mean, that is just freaking awesome.
Amazing.
And we can clap right now.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
That's just incredible. So I love that. I appreciate that so much. Great article. We'll put that in the show notes.
Yeah, for sure. And by the way, I don't know if we mentioned this in the first episode, but we will name drop a lot because
gratuitous name dropping.
Literally, Adam and I, as we were trying to get these microphones to function properly tonight, we were just talking about the fact that there are a lot of what seem to be new thoughts floating around out there when really they're just recycled old thoughts.
Yeah.
And we'll get more into that, but any authors that we kind of quote along the way, that's something that really just grabbed us, we will put in the show notes because we firmly believe that, there's a lot of good material out there that you could go even more in depth on this subject and a lot of the other subjects that we cover.
Couple books, couple authors, and then we need your obvious, as a listener, hey, you didn't cover this in the show notes, or, could you talk more about that in a later episode or whatever? And there's going to be a lot of room for that. So it's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
So I think you guys are starting to understand, and I hope the listeners are starting to understand that our version of this deconstructive process, this pulling apart faith to allow it to grow, letting it be pruned, letting it to be hacked down to the pure stump, is a version of faith and growth and spiritual practice that's quite a bit different than a lot of the things out there. There's some other podcasts out there that are doing similar things that are dark, and they really just are pretty immature, to be honest, and they just kind of crap on everything and take the listener to this really dark, vapid place and they just go, it doesn't really mean anything anymore, man. It's just gone. And we just need to just hang on to words, and we're just going to be spiritual without anything to be spiritual about. And we're not going to take you guys to that place. What we're doing is quite a bit different. And in many ways, we believe that this is a very part of the structure and tradition that we're taking apart, that it's inherent in spirituality. It's inherent in God. It's inherent in revelation. And we're really excited to bring you to a place where grace can just grab us all. And so, John, let's tell our stories a little bit about like how we came across this idea of deconstruction, how we got maybe pulled into it, invited into it, we crashed into it, and kind of what that's looked like a little bit. So, for you, I know a little bit about your story, but man,
from the first time we recorded this,
yeah, basically.
I jokingly told my wife tonight, I'm like, I'm gonna have to talk about you all over again.
All over.
Yeah. So she's like, all right,
Deal with it.
You can add more stuff.
Deal with it.
I'm like, well, we'll see. Okay.
Yeah. Panic at the Disco.
Oh man. Okay. So the long and short of my upbringing, and we kind of touched on a little bit of our backgrounds in the first intro episode, but I grew up a pastor's kid, so that kind of came along with its own set of struggles.
Yeah, and you're not on a stripper pole right now. So
no.
Fortunately,
I took the wiser path.
Yeah, fortunately, you were protected from that.
Man, but obviously that comes with its own set of struggles. I can't remember if it was in the first episode, but I talked about the fact that it comes with its own set of expectations. Like people assume that just because your dad's the pastor that you have the entire Bible, verse by verse, memorized and that sort of thing. So, so growing up in the church, I really didn't have a moment where I questioned things. It's just very easy to get into cruise control.
Yeah, totally, man.
And kind of just, oh, well, this is just what we do. We go to church on Sundays.
Never got forced into that. Never got invited into it. Never needed to.
No.
Yeah.
So when people I run into now, who are like a little bit newer to the faith, ask me the question, hey, when were you saved? And I'm like, what? I'm like, always?
Yeah,
I don't know.
I'm a pastor's kid. What are you, stupid?
Yeah. That comes with an automatic, ticket into heaven.
My dad is your pastor.
Yeah. He's got a direct phone to God.
Yeah.
And I get a free ticket, and you get like a certain amount of kids get in, the rest of them have to earn their way.
I feel sorry for you for even asking me that question.
Yeah.
Because you obviously are not in at all.
Right.
You're going straight to hell.
You just don't get it. You're asking the wrong questions. So I think for me, the questioning phase didn't really hit until college, which I think is probably true for a lot of people. You're finally away from home for the first time, and you're on your own. And I think at that point, I started taking religion classes and psychology classes, philosophy, and really enjoying all of those. And then I started to kind of think to myself, what do I believe?
Right.
Beyond, just my family and my community.
Yeah, totally.
Which we'll definitely talk about that. You have a great insight into that. But dude, it's so good. But I had some tough experiences with the church, and that sort of thing, with the politics of it, and just some bad experiences. And we'll get into that.
Who can't relate to that? There's not a person listening right now that can't relate to that. And if that's not reason enough to know more about why you believe what you believe, you can't let others believe for you.
Yeah, and we will definitely dedicate some time in an episode to that. I think, there's certainly plenty of people out there who've had negative church experiences from one reason or another, and we'll definitely touch on that. No worries, but yeah. So I think as I grew into adulthood, into my 20s, I never really felt a strong sense of connection to any theology or even church community. I was just kind of going through the motions. I think a lot of people can probably identify with that, just kind of droning through, the church. It almost became a habit at that point, So, once I started to dive deeper, I'm like, man, some of this stuff sounds kind of crazy.
Yeah, right.
Like, we were just reading through Genesis. Remember when I texted you about it? I'm like, Lot's daughters just totally got him drunk and then took advantage of him. That's kind of weird, man.
That's kind of weird, dude. Genesis chapter 19 will make your soul feel disgustingly dirty.
Yeah.
And, honestly, just Genesis in general, if it doesn't raise a lot of questions for you,
Then you're way too comfortable and you've been watching way too much HBO.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, dude. But the science aspect of like the beginning chapters of Genesis, like if you can just take that and not question it. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with you or there's not a beauty in simple belief, but like it raises questions in our culture now.
Mm-hmm.
And you need to wrestle with that. Like, and that is great. That is okay. So yeah, man, I get it.
I can't wait till we get into the Bible.
We're going to.
Just wait.
Episodes 4, 5, and 6 probably.
Yep. So stay tuned to that. We definitely, atheist, agnostic friends out there, just hold tight. We're getting there.
And a lot of you that think the Bible is crazy and creepy and subversive or, objectifying or, just nuts. Just straight up nuts.
Hold tight.
Just hold tight because
we're getting there.
We do too. And there's a lot of great stuff to talk about. What an unbelievable experience it is.
And just a quick note, a lot of you have already submitted questions in regards to that sort of thing. Great questions, guys. Like
Phenomenal
I cannot
questions.
Tell you how many great questions we've already gotten. Please email us at deconstructionistpodcast@gmail.com. We are definitely going to use these questions. If not,
we're already using them.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
We're already using them.
Honestly,
keep them coming. You are forming this podcast and this community.
Yes, this is just as much yours, if not more so than ours.
Gosh, that blesses my freaking face off.
I mean, you drive, and we will just. I mean, the nice thing is we'll do all the work.
Get your yoga on. Get your workout on.
Yeah,
get your jazzercise on.
We'll bury ourselves some books, and it'll be fun.
And that's what we're gonna do.
Yep.
We're gonna nerd out. We do it all for you.
Trust me.
We're going to the depths of nerddom.
A little for us.
That's more like,
yeah. So, all right. So basically, I am now a 36-year-old man who looks like a 12-year-old, but it took me a really long time to hit that wall where I'm like, man, I really got to tear this apart. And so, am I talking too loud?
No.
Okay.
No, you're good. You're good.
So basically, I was standing in the kitchen with my wife one night, and I said, you know what? I don't know if I believe in Jesus or like the magical aspects of that whole situation. And you want to see your wife just poop her pants in the kitchen? She was like, what?
What? Because the premise of your marriage was...
Yeah, when I married you...
Pastor's kid,
we
wife
had
grew
this
up in
locked
church,
down.
Got it locked down. Gonna read the stories. Gonna teach it to the kids.
Yeah.
And what are you talking about? And
right.
Fiona was your 2-year-old daughter, your beautiful 2-year-old daughter, was a year old? Not even?
Probably a year old, yeah.
And you're like, man, I don't know.
But for me, I was like, man, I don't know. But for me, I was just, I had this sense of excitement where I was like, I'm going on a journey and I'm really excited. And she's like, he's going on a journey. This may not end well.
He's not coming back.
Yeah.
I'm going to lose my husband. I'm going to lose my spiritual foundation. I'm going to lose the life that I had envisioned. And we're going to do a whole episode on doubting and marriage and committed relationships. And we're going to get our hilarious wives on here.
Yeah.
To just talk about this with us and kind of give some advice to anybody that's thinking about doing that, talking about it. Maybe you don't have that kind of an open relationship with your husband or your wife or your boyfriend or your girlfriend or your parents or whatever. We're going to talk a little bit about how to broach that subject, how to just crack that space open wherever that finds you.
So, I mean, that's kind of where I started to deconstruct my own personal faith. And then from there, I just...
Would you say that you're still in the deconstruction, or are you more in the rebuilding or whatever?
I think there's always an element to where you're always going to deconstruct a little.
Well, we're advocating for that hugely.
So I think the idea is that it's a process, an ongoing process. And there's even a quote that I saw the other day that says, deconstruction is not the end. It's just a readjustment period that aims to result in growing and spreading of the Christian faith.
Come on, man.
Dude.
That'll preach.
And so for me, it's just an ongoing process where, you know what? I've reaffirmed some things.
Yeah.
And I have absolutely just strengthened the foundation of certain things. And then come to some other realizations, looking at some things in a different way that I'd never noticed before. And so, obviously, shortly after that, I met you. And, we realized we were reading a lot of the same stuff, and that just further ignited the fire. And a year later, here we are. And I could not be more excited. My wife is just like, man, had I known it was going to end like this, I would have been like, yeah, dude, do it.
Do it.
Do it now.
Do it. So,
so how did you?
Oh man,
it
is so wild, John.
Totally different story.
Totally different story. I've got this unbelievable, weird, like amazing journey of faith that has chapters that are really clear and delineated. And now I'm coming into this much more vague, nebulous, wonderful, mysterious place. And being, raised in a Christian home, I mentioned on episode 0, the Adventures in Odyssey DC Talk, really wholesome, fundamentalist, was not allowed to watch PG-13 movies, was not allowed to listen to secular music, went off the rails a little bit in my early 20s, and in college, hit it very, very well, kept going to church, and was struggling hard, trying to figure out how my obvious lack of belief, because my actions were just all over the place. I was not concerned about my fellow man. I was not concerned about grace or justice or peace or any redeeming human quality or endeavor. I mean, I was completely selfish.
So girls?
Yeah. Sorry, ladies. But just always feeling like I had been protected from any catastrophe at that point, and really felt like I started to build up a theology that I thought I was going to be able to stand on forever. Memorizing systematic theology, biblical theology, going to seminary, becoming a wannabe philosopher, theologian, apologist, and reading just to reinforce my rightness. Going to seminary, becoming a pastor, getting ordained, preaching is something that I value more than almost anything. I know that it's what I'm called to do. How and what that looks like, I don't know, but becoming ordained and preaching, what a gift that is. But then starting to feel, as we talked about on episode 0, spiritual claustrophobia. Just my room was so small, and I knew every wall and every crack and every window, and I knew where the light was coming from, and I knew when and what time of day, and there was no mystery left, and there was no ambiguity, and God was so small that he could fit into my room. And in that spiritual claustrophobic experience in my corporate job, I was trained. We do some management training, which is really just behavioral science. That's what management is. And in learning how to become more self-aware, and this is beautiful because that's what deconstruction is, it's becoming self-aware. You got to know where your blind spots are. You got to know where your blind spots are. How have you been set up and wired to see things the way you see things? And if you can get that, you can start to actually see outside of it and see the way other people see things and be recognizing what are called biases. So I got trained on these 3 biases in this corporate training environment in Washington, D.C., in a boardroom. And I just feel God speaking to me through these things, man. I feel the divine voice leading me to a place that I had already started to go. Out of my claustrophobia and saying, this is the way right here. And so I got trained on these 3 unconscious biases, and I'm a big advocate of this now. Everybody needs to look into this. We all have lots of biases, lots of blind spots on how we see things. And the 3 main ones that I got trained on were, the first one is an affinity bias. You surround yourself with the kinds of people that you're most like and that are the easiest to work with, that you've got the most in common with, that agree with you the most, and that are the most like you. It's an affinity. You have an affinity towards other people, and you surround yourself with people like that. We see this all over the place, everywhere we go. The next one is the one that knocked me out of my chair and left me hanging with my mouth open, sitting there feeling like God just handed me my rear end. And this is called a confirmation bias. And a confirmation bias means that you have a particular way of seeing the world, and you filter out any views, perspectives, or voices or information that does not match what you already want to confirm. Bottom line, confirmation bias is you see what you want to see. You hear what you want to hear. It's for validation. It's for your ego. It's for security. It's for self-identification. And you see what you want to see. You hear what you want to hear. And the last one is we're all plugged into a system. So there's a bias just ingrained in the system that we find ourselves in. That's called a systemic bias, a system bias. So the system that we find ourselves in, the Christian culture, the upbringing, the corporate America, the capitalistic, the individualistic, the Western Enlightenment, all of these things compile a system that processes information for you. And I looked at these things and I was like, oh my gosh, this is real. This is happening. I'm only listening and looking at things that I know I already agree with, that I know already agree with me. That is not okay. If I believe, and this is where it really, the brass tacks, man, it hit, and I'm in this corporate environment and I'm almost feeling like just weeping. I'm almost feeling like brokenhearted. And I'm like, if I say I believe in grace, right? I say that faith is something that you can test. I say that ask your questions, that good doctrine can stand up to any kind of questioning. And yet here I am only reading everything from one stream, one perspective, and acting like I'm open to other things and the possibility of finding truth elsewhere. And I got freaking slapped out of my chair, and I'll never forget it. But at the same time, even though it was terrifying and I felt horrible, I felt like a hypocrite. At the same time, I felt this unbelievable invitation to stop, to look elsewhere, to invite new perspectives and new streams, and that is where this was born in me.
You know, it's funny, what struck me when you were talking about that, and I love that story, so I'm really happy I had to hear it more than once, but...
You're so sweet, man. You're so encouraging.
Oh, it's so great, though. I think, honestly, man, I think there are a ton of people out there who are listening to this right now who are pumping their fists in the air, and they're like, yeah, man, that's totally, I can identify with that.
I hope so. I hope this invites people into vastness and sets them free.
And how many, and I'm not trying to offend any churches out there, but how many churches with those awesome bookstores in there probably have only books in there that their church agrees with?
Yeah, from their stream, from their tribe.
I mean, I would imagine probably all of them.
Saying that God is a God of truth, and all truth is God's truth, and yet we're only going to give you one perspective.
Mm-hmm. I mean, honestly, when it comes down to it, if your faith is strong enough, you should be able to read other authors who disagree with you and not have it affect your faith.
It's been my favorite thing I've started doing, probably in my whole life.
So let's tie this all together. Let's talk about, let's go back in history a little bit.
Is this the first time this has ever happened? Everybody wants to know. We're trembling. We're quaking in our boots right now. Are we alone?
Is this one of those new things the kids are doing?
Are we the rebels without a cause? Are we James Deaning this and drinking whiskey and smoking cigarettes and saying to hell with the man?
I still believe it's the devil's music, but that's just me.
So give it to us, man. Give us the overview of history and how we're not alone here.
So look, again, these are not our thoughts. These are thoughts by much smarter individuals who have already wrestled through this stuff way, way before us. So once basically every 500 years, we see a major moment of deconstruction. Now, it may not have been called deconstruction in those days. They may have used a different term.
What did they use 500 years ago, for example?
Reformation.
Yeah. Have you heard of that one before? Because if you're not Catholic
Knox,
and
Calvin.
you identify as a Christian at all, Protestant, that means protest.
Yes.
Protestant Reformation. That means fist in the air, rage against the machine, take down the Vatican. Actually, more reform it from the inside out, but it didn't work and they got excommunicated. But yeah. But sounds like a deconstruction.
I just got a picture of Martin Luther.
It's just ridiculous, man, that people think that this is new.
Not at all.
95 Theses nailed to the door at Wittenberg. The Council of Worms. I mean, here I stand, I can do no other.
I've been there, dude.
Oh my gosh.
I didn't tell you that, did I? Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Oh,
I got to sing in that cathedral, man.
This is, listener, listen. This is not new.
This is not new. 500 years before that, you know what happened? The Great Schism.
But it's necessary. And it's necessary for you to get involved in.
500 years before that, happened again.
Yeah.
The Council of Chalcedon in 451.
500 years before that.
And guys, they were fighting about
the dawning of the early church, the breaking down of the temple. 500 years before that, the rebuilding of the temple. 500 years before that, the exile. 500 years before that, it goes on and on and on.
Guys, and the things that we're bickering about today, think about this. The Great Schism, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, wasn't that over unleavened versus leavened bread?
No, it was actually over the filioque debate also, which was does the Holy Spirit proceed from the Father or the Father and the Son? My church history nerd coming out at you here.
Great Schism was also, it was definitely also the bread issue
Yeah,
too.
and there was bread. Dude, there was all these little
bread people,
little arguments that came, and this fractured the Eastern and the Western Church. And this set up what we now know as the Holy Roman Empire, Vatican, Western,
Yeah. In fact, one of the interesting side quotes I didn't even put here in my notes was a result of one of the moments of growth and stretching of the church was that one of the popes instituted the whole idea of the monastery. And as a result of monasteries, they were able to actually keep a lot of the really great writings that we now enjoy because the cities were being overrun by illiterate crazy folk.
Yeah. So
as a result of the monasteries, we were able to hang on to a lot of this really amazing stuff that was written during early Christianity. So the idea that
it's freaking awesome.
Oh, it's amazing. I
love it, dude.
I was digging so hard in this stuff. I have so many more notes, but
your nerddom,
guys,
is just so beautiful to me.
Thank you, man.
Yeah.
So I guess I really recommend one of the books that I read and that I use for a lot of this stuff is by this woman, this scholar who just passed away a year ago, who has the world's greatest name. We need to make a T-shirt.
We're gonna make a T-shirt.
Phyllis Tickle.
Yeah.
You've been tickled.
You've been tickled. Your brain just got tickled. Hopefully your heart and your soul did too. So tell us more.
The Great Emergence. So go get that book. She really
tell us
breaks
more,
this
man.
down
Keep
well.
nerding out on us.
All right. So technology, so basically, how did we get to where we are now? If we look
in the
back,
year 2016, kind of when did this start? What are some things that started this new upheaval?
Man, people have seen this coming. A lot of scholars said at the beginning of the 1900s, they saw
the fundamentalists.
The fundamentalists were born of this
because of evolution, the challenge of evolution
science,
to scripture,
technology,
which we're going to
the
talk
automobile.
About. Yes,
are the biggest.
The
one
automobile
now,
was huge.
That changed the way we did church.
It destroyed community.
Yeah,
and made us completely rework it.
Yeah,
there was
back
no
in those days?
the neighborhood parish and the driving into the
all day church.
Yeah, having church right in the center of town there, and everybody walks and
churches at Sunday nights.
Yeah.
So then it created a change to Sunday mornings and Saturday nights. And the biggest thing now is technology and communication. So now it's not just, you go to your community church. It's you can converse with people of not only all denominations, but all faiths, all religions. You can communicate across the world. So
which is what we're trying to do here.
Dude, 100%.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing, and the thing that struck me today is there's a really interesting diagram in that Phyllis Tickle book, but it talks about how they used to be able to break all churches down, all denominations down, and categorize them into one of four different boxes. The liturgicals, the conservatives, the social justice folks.
Yeah, we just had a series about this at church, I think.
We just crushed this thing.
Yeah.
Because now, you can't just say that Roman Catholics aren't for social justice, because there are many Roman Catholics who are. And so now it's become less of a box and more of just this melting pot.
Right.
And now you see
less identity.
Yeah. So now you see, as a result of this, a lot more of these non-denominational churches being formed because they're kind of melting together their own form, their own theology, and their own form of Christianity. And there's no home for them within the traditional structure.
Right.
So it's just fascinating. But this is something that's been coming for a long time.
Yeah, so many factors have contributed to this, and now we find ourselves here. And I think for the listeners, you felt this coming. You felt this being introduced to you. You feel it all around you. It's why you're resonating with the conversation that's being had right now in your ears, is because you know it's happening. You know that there's questions that need to be asked. You know that there's progress that needs to be made. You know that there is wonder and mystery that needs to be reclaimed. And you know that it needs to be done in grace and in peace and in love. And you know that you want to be a part of it. And we want you to be a part of it right here.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we can. I think we can definitely summarize and kind of tie this all together. And some other really good books that you should check out. There's a book called Falling Upward by Richard Rohr that absolutely blew my mind.
Oh, dude, unbelievable.
And definitely we're gonna circle this back around too and talk about where can you find deconstruction in Scripture for those
Yeah,
that are really like, dude,
it's like, I'm a Christian. This sounds wacky.
yeah.
What do I tell my pastor or my parents or, whatever? Or how do I even make myself feel like, oh, I'm not just rejecting all of this stuff?
Yeah.
Listen, real quick. Let me just break this down, a couple things real quick. So in Scripture, the first place that I would go is what I call probably the palate cleanser of Scripture. The first book that was probably ever written is the book of Job. It's probably not even Hebrew. It's very strange that it even made it into the Bible, but it's definitely probably the oldest book in Scripture. And it is this complete deconstruction of ideas of how good is God, how evil is Satan, how do they interact, what is going on with suffering and righteousness, and why doesn't that always work? And then Job, this righteous sufferer, all he wants to do is talk to God. All he wants to do is get some questions answered. And in chapter 38, verse 1, God says to Job, "Who is this that darkens counsel by words without knowledge? Dress for action like a man," and that literally means gird up your loins like a man, "and I will question you, and you make it known to me. Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth?" God is just flipping this whole thing on its head, saying, you don't know what you're talking about. And then Christ hits the scene and completely flips everything on its head. It's this minor chord of descent all through Scripture. This is in the Psalms. This is in the prophets. This is necessary. It's needed. Don't put God in a box. You can't do it. He is the ground of being. When Moses met him in the burning bush, right? Who are you? Moses, take off your sandals. The ground you're standing on is holy. You're going to go tell my people and liberate them. And you're going to tell them that I sent you and that I'm leading them out of Egypt and out of oppression with a mighty hand and an outstretched arm. Who, Lord, who am I going to say sent me? I am that I am. I am being. I am myself. I am nothing like you could have ever imagined before, and you can't define me. I will not give you my name. Like the other gods, you think you've got their name, you're putting them in a box. I will be what I will be. That's all you need to know. So this is in there. Feel free to pull that thread, pick it up, learn from your rabbi, learn from Jesus. And if you're of a different tradition, realize that Christianity is not this Western, capitalistic, American, Enlightenment influenced, static thing that you've probably seen portrayed. It is a beautiful, open, gracious invitation to experience a mysterious God that is full of love and grace. And it's beautiful, man. And so, that is there. And then, also for those of you that are there, one of the things that you're also probably realizing that is so central to who we are as this generation of like millennials and young people and even people that are a little bit older and a little bit younger. You know what we are? We're like DIYers, right? John, you're a DIYer.
Oh, have you seen my entertainment center?
Yeah, IKEA DIY.
It
right?
wasn't originally.
But we roast our own coffee, don't we? We brew our own beer.
Mm-hmm.
We plant our own gardens. We change things and we do it ourselves. And we are not going to be a generation that is going to let a pastor believe for us, believe by proxy. Just like the Reformation says the Pope doesn't believe for me, the papacy doesn't tell me exactly what to believe, that this is for everybody. It is open. It is a conversation. And so for the DIYers out there, don't let others believe for you. It used to be the papacy, and then it became the pastors, and then it became the leaders. And to some people, it's just the Bible. The Bible believes for me. No, the Bible doesn't say it, you believe it, and that settles it. You have to think. You have to deconstruct. You have to pull it apart. You have to look at it. That is super, super important. And that is my invitation for you guys.
Beautiful, man.
Dude.
So let's, I don't know how we could wrap this up in a better way. So I'm going to leave you with a Rohr quote, and then we're going to talk about some really exciting news we have.
Yeah. You do Rohr. I'm going to do that one quick little Rollins thing.
Yes. Oh.
Blow that up.
Oh, man.
And then we're going to wrap this up real quick.
Yeah. So just in regards to Rohr is this just brilliant brain. And so what he talks about.
Minds.
Oh, man. So the important thing that he talks about is look, you can't just start from a place of deconstruction. It's good to start with some sort of structure. And he talks about the fact that it's good to grow up with some sort of, conservative
Some
worldview.
foundation.
Yeah.
Yeah, you need a structure. You need a foundation.
Or
I remember
our
that.
favorite little passage where he talks about it's good to have a goad to kick against.
Yes, you have to.
But you can't stay there.
No.
So he said you can't. I think he compares it to building a picket fence around it.
Yeah. You build a container, he says. You build a house, you build a room, you build a picket fence around it, you stay there forever. Mm-hmm. No.
Hit me with some Rollins.
So one of the things that I loved about Rollins is in his book, The Insurrection. Remember when he's talking about crucifixion and how it's not just something you believe in, it's something you enter into. Mm-hmm. Just like, remember that Kierkegaard quote that he used also? Like, why do we love depressing music so much?
Yep.
Why do we love so much to listen to somebody just croon about some painful tragedy that happened to them? Because somehow you're being invited into that. Yeah. You're entering into it. And like Kierkegaard said, anytime you tell a poet or a musician that you love their music and that you want them to make more, you are saying to them, may new tragedies befall you. May new trauma knock on your front door. And may when you parse your lips, may these beautiful sounds come out that I might enter into them with you and participate. And it's like the crucifixion is something that we stand from a distance and look at. But as an act of unbelievable deconstruction, it takes all concepts of God and humanity and smashes them to unrecognizable smithereens and says, you don't know what you're talking about. It all needs to be pulled apart. God went through a deconstruction. Your concepts of God don't work here anymore. This is unexplainable. This is a darkness beyond darkness. But now here comes the resurrection. And so he says, instead of just assenting to some belief in, a God that died for you or, forgiving my sins or whatever. It's something we're supposed to enter into, participate in. Let your concepts of God, your soul, the divine, all these things be smashed open and let grace and resurrection and new life rise up from the ashes.
Beautiful, brother.
What?
Yes. Dude, yeah, pick up Rollins again. We'll have those all in our show notes.
You'll hate a lot of it.
But you'll love
But it'll be
lot
a
of
fight that you'll appreciate. You'll go, no, that can't be true. I don't appreciate that. But that's so good.
I'm gonna put up his music critic quote tomorrow. I have to.
Dude, that's awesome.
It plays off of that so beautifully.
Yeah.
So guys, I mean, again, deconstruction is not the end, it's just the beginning.
No, don't be afraid to find, right? Aren't we? This is a process of looking, of searching. It's cool to search. It's not so cool to find. Don't have the courage, if you're going to deconstruct, to even be skeptical of your deconstruction to the point that when something resonates with you, like John, it has with you. I mean, there's been so many things with you and me that we're pulling things apart and we're like, doesn't look like I can get rid of this one. This one's here to stay for now. This is a big one. This is not going anywhere. I found something here. So it's cool to search. It's not so cool to find. We're going to find also.
Yeah.
We're going to be open to both. Otherwise, we'd be somewhat hypocritical, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So with that, guys, like we have so much more good stuff coming. So just stay tuned. More. We've got great interviews coming up. Next one is with our lead pastor from the church that we go to, Simon Forsyth, who's the only Irish Australian American that I've ever met. And
listen, for the accent alone, and for the fact that nobody will make you feel more welcome to struggle and to wrestle and to be messy. I mean, dude named his church Life because life is messy.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, man. That's why he's like, life is a mess.
He sold me with a kilt. I didn't.
He's so great.
I didn't even need the message, but
that is going to be such a treat.
So he's coming next week, and we definitely have it lined up where we're going to get some content out to you pretty quickly within the next month. So stay tuned. Big, huge, exciting announcement. We have a launch party, guys. Like, we want to get out and meet the people who have supported us. And by the way, your support in this initial, just for the intro episode,
oh my gosh,
has been overwhelming.
Hundreds of downloads.
Yeah. Blew our minds.
What are you talking about?
Adam and I had that conversation yesterday on the phone. What
is going on right now?
Holy
guys,
cow.
This is obviously something that's needed, and this is all you. This is all you. This is driven by you. The content is driven by you. It's tailored for you, by you. Keep it coming. You're hugging us right now.
So we wanna celebrate with you And we want to kind of get the word out a little bit. So March 20th is going to be our podcast launch party. And it's not going to just be us. We have exciting guests coming. We have great live music. We have acoustic sets by Vespertine, aka Colin Rigsby. We've also got another band,
Serpent and Dove.
Oh, David Carey.
Which is fits beautifully with Deconstruction and Dark and Light, and is a project by David Carey, who was our producer for this show today.
Brilliant musician. It's going to be so good. On top of that, we are going to have a cash bar. We'll have beer and wine.
Yep.
And we're also going to have a coffee pour-over bar available there as well. And
it's going to be awesome.
Some merch.
Mingle, fellowship, and converse, talk, argue.
Yes.
Give us some ideas. You'll get to sign up for the podcast and just be in this space with us.
It's going to be so much fun,
It'll be freaking awesome, dude.
So 6 p.m. is when it starts, runs till 11 p.m. So we're going to have great times. We'll have some drinks together, have some great conversation, and some
$5
awesome music.
online at www.thedeconstructionists.com/live events. $5 if you buy in advance. There's very limited space. About 70 tickets is all we've got right now. And $7 if you make it to the door. We probably won't have any space yet. You're going to want to get your tickets in advance. And then tell them about social media, and we'll close this sucker out.
So if you go to that live page, you can pay us directly through the PayPal account we have set up through Deconstructionist Podcast at gmail.com. You can also reach us, like I said, all of your questions at deconstructionistpodcast at gmail.com. We also can be found on Facebook, Deconstructionist Podcast, that's plural, Deconstructionists Podcast. And you can also find us on Instagram under the same name. And then, of course, our website is thedeconstructionist.com. So you can find us at any of those places. Please come like us. And the biggest thing you can do to help us is please go to iTunes, subscribe to our podcast, and leave us a really nice 5-star review on iTunes. That is going to be the biggest thing that helps us get the word out and get even better and better guests. So thank you guys so much.
Can't wait to do it again. This is the Deconstructionist Podcast. We are your hosts. I'm Adam Narlock.
And I am John Williamson.
Grace and peace to you, friends.